Hi, this is Vera Brodsky with the Brodsky Team Real Estate here in Seattle area. And today I'm so excited. We have Joyce from Connor Appraisals, and we're going to dive into the topic, what is an appraisal? We get a lot of questions when we sell the house, when we buy a house, when someone decides to refinance. And so we have an expert today. So hi, Joyce.
Hello.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, let's dive into some questions that we usually have. So my first question is, what is an appraisal?
Well, an appraisal is an evaluation of what current market value is for a property. So it's not what you want it to be or what the highest is or the lowest. It's the most typical price in the market.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question is, how is buying versus refinancing is looked upon in the appraisal world?
Yeah, they're both looked upon very similarly. The only difference is that you have a purchase and sale when you have a purchase. But in both instances, our job is to give the most probable price in the market. Now, when we have a purchase, of course, we're looking at that price and we're kind of in the back of our mind thinking, is this reasonable? Does this fall in line with what true market value is? That's why a lot of times homeowners will say, oh, how did my appraisal come in just at the purchase price? Well, a lot of times there's a variation of value, a spread. And so if the sales price is in between that spread, a lot of times we'll bring it in at that sales price because we know we had a buyer and a seller who agreed, and that's why we will come in at that price.
Perfect. And what about with refinance?
Refinancing is you don't have any numbers, obviously, to look at, which in some ways, it doesn't give you any kind of influence or makes you think about that. So what we do is we go out and we try to find the most similar sold comparables, preferably within the last 6 months, to see what prices or what properties have sold for like this property. And that's how we determine what the value is. We do some adjustments here and there. Nothing's ever going to be apples to apples perfect, but we look for similar comparables, hopefully in the same neighborhood.
Perfect. So going off that statement, can you tell us a little bit what is a comparable for a house or a condo?
So with a condo, obviously condos are a comparable. You shouldn't be going and buying single family homes or using single family homes. For a house, there's very many variations. If you have a view property, well, you want to try to find view properties that are similar. If it's on a busy road, that is what we call an external obsolescence. You need to find something that also has an external obsolescence. Same with power lines, things like that. So our first thing is trying to find something that's sold. The most recent sales are always the best. Excuse me. Most recent sales are always the best. And then square footage, of course, we go for views, site size, especially if it's a large property. Waterfront, always should use waterfront. And if a home is a 2-story, you try to find 2 stories. If it's a rambler, you try to find ramblers. Sometimes you can't get that all perfect. So sometimes you have to pull from one place for one reason. Maybe I'm using a house that doesn't have a great view, but it's a rambler like the property. But the property has a great view, so then maybe I can only find a rambler with basement that has a similar view. Well, then I pull that in. So sometimes you'll see different comparables for different reasons.
What is the square footage when you go into a house and you have a variation? What is plus and minus for square footage and the bedrooms? Let's say that we have a 3-bedroom house that is built in 1980 and it's 2,000 square feet. What would be the variation of the homes that you would put as a comparable for that type of a house?
Okay, I wouldn't use 2 bedrooms. I wouldn't even consider those if I didn't have to. The only time I really consider small bedrooms is when the house has small bedrooms. So if it's only a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom, very important. But anything 3-bedroom and over, I would be open to finding a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom. As far as site or square footage, I try to stay somewhere between no bigger than about 300 square feet either end. Now, of course, if it's something that's very easy and you can find a lot of comparables that are very similar in size, you always go for the most similar. But say you have a property, most properties aren't so easy. So a lot of times you have to spread out a little bit. So I may do 200 square feet bigger and adjust for that, or smaller. I have noticed that between a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, there is a value difference. People want that. But sometimes if a house is a 3-bedroom with a den, that doesn't have such a big value because the people technically could turn that into a bedroom if they want. So I'll be open to that. One big thing is when homes have basements, you need to separate the basement square footage from the above grade square footage. There is a value difference in that, and underwriters and banks want to see both levels bracketed. And bracketing means you have to find something on both sides, that one bigger, one smaller, and then yours is in the middle. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So going back to the basement, that's an actually very interesting topic, because in Seattle area, we do have a lot of homes that do have basements. And a lot of the times the sellers do ask, why is the basement not valued the same as the first and the second story? So when you're valuing the basement, what would you say the value of the basement square footage is relative to the first and the second floor?
So I get asked that question a lot, but you don't know what the value is until you do a market research of that area. So what I'll do is I'll take like a micro neighborhood. So let's say you're in the Seattle area. So, let's say West Seattle. I'll see how the market reacts to that basement square footage in that area, but I won't know that until I actually crunch my numbers. So it's not an exact number for every single area. It's something that an appraiser has to figure out by doing a side-by-side analysis of things that don't have basements and things that do, and you see how the value is affected. I will say that it's always lower. And two of the main reasons it is because basements are always cheaper to finish because the walls are already there. So the price per square foot is not as high. And then the main reason is, although basements do have square footage that's usable living, people don't tend to use that basement area as much. They don't love that as much as they love being up on the upper floors where the kitchens and all of that are. So that's why the market does react a little bit less they don't love it as much as above grade square footage.
Got it. This is great information. And what about the age of the house? Like I said, let's say we have a 1980s house. What is the upper and the lower limit of the house you would be looking at when appraising a home of that age?
So that's a really good question, because I don't look at actual age as quickly as I look at effective age. We have two things that we look at. We put in our reports the actual age, and then we also put in what we call the effective age. So let's say a home was built in 1911, but it has completely been refurbished down to the studs. The effective age of that would be way less than what the actual age is. I mean, we're kind of coming back to an almost new home, right? If you went down to the studs. So I may use a newer built home to compare to that, because they're virtually the same in the eye of a buyer. There's nothing to do, it's turnkey, all of that. So the effective age is much more important than actual age. However, what's more important is, say we have a turn of the century home. Those are very specific craftsman type styles that people really desire because of a lot of the styles that they did in the turn of the century. So then I would try to find similar age homes that have also been refurbished, if that makes sense. But if I have a house, in another example, if I have a house like in the 1980s and they completely remodeled it, then I don't care if I'm using a house that was built in 2000 or 2005. If it looks the same and feels the same to a buyer, then I will still include it as a viable comp if it's in the neighborhood or it is considered a viable comp.
Okay, that's great information. Now, square footage. A lot of the times when we try to price a house for the buyer and the seller, the client wants to see the price per square foot for a specific area. Now, when you're going in and appraising a house, is that something that you look at?
Never. So appraisers never use price per square foot because price per square foot includes every single thing in that property, meaning site size, meaning view quality. Everything is put into the price per the square foot for the house. Well, what we do is we separate those things out. So we have line items for each thing. So price per square foot on the all over property to us and to underwriters and to lenders is not considered a good indicator of value. So we do not use price per square foot. And I always recommend that people don't rely too much on price per square foot because there's a lot more that goes into value than just one lump sum into one criteria of a property.
Got it. Well, this is a lot of great information. I think this is wonderful as an introduction to what an appraisal is. I'd like to maybe meet with you again soon, and we can go about discussing different type of appraisals, because when people are getting loans or refinancing, when we are dealing with a conventional loan, a 5% down, a 20% down, VA loan for veterans, FHA loans, those are all require a little bit of tweaking when it comes to an appraisal. So thank you so much again, Joyce, for joining us today. And if this is the first time you're watching my channel, please subscribe, please like us, and you'll get notifications when we have more information coming out about different types of appraisals and just some more information about Seattle real estate market and real estate market in general. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to see you soon. Goodbye.